Hi, I'm Addie, and welcome back to the next episode of Over a Cup of Coffee with Jamie and Addie. We are very excited for you to meet our guests today, and that is plural. We hope you enjoy this episode and you rush out and buy this very amazing book that we're about to talk about.
Hi, it's Jamie, and welcome to this episode of Over a Cup of Coffee. Today is the Women's Summit episode, and we're so excited to talk about our upcoming Professional Women's Summit, and also we're going to have a conversation with our keynote speaker and author, Christina Erteszek. So we're really happy that you're here to join us. So, Addie,
yes,
my podcast buddy, my podcast partner, co-creator. Yeah. What did we call ourselves?
Creative directors.
That's right. That's our title, our official title.
Yeah.
So we made it through Chile in October.
We did, yes. And it was a great event.
It was.
It was so wonderful. The weather was perfect. We had a lot of people come out. We're estimating about 600 people came through.
Right.
And yeah, it was pretty impressive.
That's right. So to remind our podcast listening audience, we're in Farmington, New Mexico, and which is in the Four Corners region of the United States. And so we got through Chile in October, and I caught up on my sleep for 1 week, and then I started thinking about Women's Summit. So now I'm back to not sleeping again, but that's okay.
I'm sleeping for you.
Oh, you're sleeping for me? Good, because I'm not sleeping at all. But so the Women's Summit is coming up October 28th, and while our in-person registration has closed, we still have virtual tickets available. So this is an event that will be live streamed.
Yeah, and I highly encourage anybody who wants to at least jump in and out. We've got some great speakers lined up. We've got a great day of networking and learning and empowering each other.
That's right.
So
we have two really special guests here today. I'm going to start with our co-chair of the event, Georgette Allen.
Yes.
And Georgette is on the board of the Farmington Chamber of Directors. But what's your official job? What is it?
What do I do for a living?
Yes.
So first of all, thank you for having me on. So I love you guys' podcast. It's a lot of fun. So I am the Public Affairs Administrator for the City of Farmington. So I handle or I oversee the public relations and marketing for the city. Started out at the police department doing similar role, and then 2019, it was February 2019, promoted over to the city, and so that's where I'm at now. Yeah.
And you've been on the Chamber Board of Directors for 2 years. I believe you're just finishing your second term.
I was asking Greg that last night. I was like, how long have I been doing that? I can't remember. I've lost track. Because 2020 and
basically
it negated itself. Yeah, but I think you came on the year after I did.
Well, I guess I should know. I'm
Okay.
Chamber CEO. I guess I should know. So let's just say 2
kind
years,
of a blur.
because I just think it is.
We'll go with that. And then Redcoats. I'm also on Redcoats.
Oh,
I've
that's
lost
right.
track of that. I can't remember. I've been on that for quite a while.
So Redcoats, for our listening audience, there are ambassadors. They wear red coats or red shirts. That's why they call the Redcoats. But for any new businesses that open up, they come and do the ribbon cuttings and help celebrate. And we've really been in that mode since 2020, really celebrating all of our new businesses that open here in Farmington, and our chamber members and stayed open.
Right, and catching up with those ones that had to cancel their grand openings because of 2020. And so, so it's really a testament of will that we have so many great businesses still with us and more opening.
And I think I'm not even sure how anybody ends up on the committee for the Women's Summit other than I just say to them.
We said, hey, we need your help.
We're having a meeting. And I don't even think we ever asked.
I need you there at 10.
I don't think there's an actual ask.
I don't think we did. We just started pulling people in.
We
and
want
saying
you
they
to
were
be a
going to
part
do
of
it.
this because we know you'll be fantastic to the team. And so thank you, because I know that this year, our 2019 was our first year of the Women's Summit, and that was an in-person event. 2020 was a virtual event, and then we have been keeping our fingers crossed and planning since the beginning of the year that this would be an actual
full
in-person live event.
Yep.
So, and it looks like it will be.
Yes.
So I want to introduce our other special guest, and this is our keynote speaker for the summit, author Christina Erteszek, who I met 3 years ago when I was working at Fort Lewis College in Durango before I came to work for the Chamber. And I met you then, but that was before. Now maybe you must have already been working on this novel, because it takes a long time to.
You think?
I do. I'm guessing it took more than a year. So Christina Erteszek, and we've got the book here. I'm going to show it to our watching audience, and then for our listening audience, it is called The First Lady of Underfashions. And so I'm just going to kind of let you take it from here and talk a little bit about it, and then we'll ask you some questions.
Well, let me first say, and you've read it, and you know that it's more than what the picture shows.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than that.
It's a lot more. You asked, did I maybe spend more than a year or two on it? And I actually wrote the book on a promise I had made to my father weeks before he passed away. And I actually start the book out with me driving him to, we lived in West Los Angeles, and I drove him down to the Pacific Coast Highway, and which he loved. And we were talking about various things, and he asked me to write his book, which I was shocked about. This was 1986, and
Oh, wow.
spring of 1986. I remember it was a gloomy, as they call in West Los Angeles, June gloom, and it was. And this was a book that he had planned on writing. He was a successful businessman along with my mother, Olga, and they were immigrants from war-torn Europe. They fled war-torn Europe in 1939. They were to wed on the eve of their wedding. The Nazis came in to their beloved Krakow, Poland. And they fled, and it took about a year and a half to get to the United States, and the rest is history.
And they were separated for a period of time there, where your father actually did make it into the United States, but your mother at that time was still, she was not able to come into the United States at the same time. So there was that time while they were separated, and so, and I'm not going to give away a lot of things of the book because I want people to buy it and read it. But so this was something in the works for since 1986 in a way, since you made the promise.
In a way, actually, he had my father wrote quite a bit. He wrote about business, and he had 2 honorary doctorates. He was actually trained as a criminal lawyer in Poland. When they came to the United States, he was allegedly selling pots and pans door to door. And my mother, whose mother in Poland, she was the breadwinner, and she was a corseteer. And so when they came to LA and needed to work, she worked at it was called the ABC corset company.
How neat.
And
that's really neat.
And I talk about it in the book, how they actually started, and I will read an excerpt at the summit about how they started their business because of an adversity they were dealing with, which was needing money to live.
It's funny how our entrepreneurial spirit will come out in those times when we need to survive. You do get all of your, I think some of my greatest ideas have come out of those adverse times, and a lot of successes too.
Well, that's creation. I mean, we create from some kind of adverse effect or situation or moment. So that's what makes us human.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Georgette, do you want to talk a little bit about the theme for this year's summit?
Yeah.
And
yeah, absolutely. And sorry,
Yeah.
anything else?
No.
So this year's theme for the summit is overcoming adversity. So, we of course handpicked our speakers and topics that we thought would fit into that theme. Just like you said, your parents starting up this business because of overcoming some sort of adversity. So most of the speakers, we have two that are talking about their own adversities, and then we have one that's talking about the police chief leadership and how you can help others through their adversities for success. So again, we've handpicked everything to fit that theme, and I think it's such a perfect time for that theme too. What we're
really is.
all coming out of,
Absolutely.
I guess this great big adversity that everybody has been experiencing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was kind of perfect timing.
Yeah. So, I have to say something about your dad, because I'm very close to my dad, and my love of reading stemmed from my dad. And I know now, I didn't know at the time as a small child, it was to control me, to make me sit down and be still and be quiet. And
You
but
just
he,
figured
but
that
he,
out.
yeah, I figured that. It took me many years. So, but he would sit me down with a book, and he would tell me, "Oh my goodness, this is going to be the greatest thing you're ever going to put in your brain." And I would get so excited, and so I would read, and I would just soak it all in. And so to have that piece with your dad where he wanted you to write the book kind of his life, I think that's just such a huge deal. I would love to. My dad, he doesn't think that he had this big great life, but he did. He raised 3 really neat kids that have turned out very different from each other and very different from our families on both sides. And gosh, I would just love to be in the car with him and him turn and say, "Hey, can you write my book?" It would be so neat.
Well, I will say it's a blessing and a curse.
Right. Right, yeah.
And I would suggest that no parent ask their child to do that.
It's a huge responsibility to tell the
I
story.
mean,
Yeah,
it is. I was a devoted daughter, so,
Yeah.
and I look back and I think, now, did he really say that? Because that, of course, is the interesting thing about writing memoir, is it's our memory. And I'm always thinking, did he?
Accurate.
Yeah, did I get that right? And of course, we do that all the time. I'm sure every
We
day.
always second
we're,
guess ourselves.
Did I
Yeah.
hear that right? Or, but it is a big responsibility, and you're right that everyone's life. I mean, we're just story. That's what life is about, is story, and all our stories are meaningful, and everyone has obstacles, and it's how you get through them that makes for storytelling.
For your story, yeah.
Because if you don't have that, then it's interesting because there have been some that knew my parents who were a little offended by what I wrote. And because they looked up to both my parents, which, I mean, they were remarkable human beings.
Right.
But not just them that are in the book. There are them and all those they encounter, but we all have foibles, and we all have an underbelly. And if we don't show that, then we're not very relatable, and I wanted to make it a relatable story. So
Yeah, it's like, on social media, you get one image out of people, and it's not always the whole thing.
That's
You
right.
only see the
you only,
good,
you only see the
positive
what they
and the
yeah
fun
yeah
and the
that
perfect
good
picture
narrative
that they
right.
came up with, and
Right,
nothing
yeah.
behind the scenes.
well, that's why young people are having such difficulty,
Right.
because
their world has been clouded.
with
Yeah.
this picture
Yeah.
perfect
Yeah.
life of social media.
Yeah, no, I want to get into the grit. I want to know the backstory. I want to know the deep, dark secret that everybody held on to and why we all turned out the way we did down the road.
Exactly.
You
And
know,
then when
but-
you see successes and
Yeah.
you know, you can see, oh, they had to overcome this, that, and the other, and
Right.
I can do that too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because you never know
Yeah.
who's going to pick it up and go, oh my goodness, I'm going through this right now, or I went through this, and it might pull them right up out of the trench that they've
Yeah.
been sitting in.
If they can do it, then I can do it too.
Yeah.
So they didn't have a picture perfect or something handed to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. I love that too.
Yeah.
So your parents, out of necessity and coming to America, and your father, from the book I read, he really did believe in that American dream of everything was possible in America. Coming from Poland, out of, escaping out of Nazi, coming in and that adventure of them leaving Poland, but he also just, it seems, really believed in that American dream to come to America. So they started the Olga undergarment fashions, which grew to be like one of the only thing for our younger listeners, I can only compare it to like Victoria's Secret or something where or what other brand,
those-
like where you would,
Sure.
everybody
Right.
knows.
Yeah.
But that was what they built it into, was a huge,
Right.
a huge fashion and so.
Icon. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Icon is- yeah.
The only thing is there was no Victoria between Victoria's Secret.
There was not.
That's right.
That was literally just a title for a store.
Yeah.
Well, there was an Olga, so
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, then built this from basically your mother starting to sew these things and looking at, and wanted to make things pretty. That was something she wanted to
Exactly.
add, that little bit of ribbon or that flower or something to make these things pretty. And then as time went on, comfortable, I mean, practical, but also comfortable. And so they built this huge undergarment, which is why it's called the First Lady of Underfashions. But I think we don't just think about how things like that start. You know, they have to start somewhere.
Right.
So that was their way of making a living when they needed to, but it grew into something so much more.
Yeah, my father always used to say, he ran the company and my mother ran the design part of it. But he liked to say that, the last thing he wanted to do when he grew up was to peddle women's underthings. Because he was trained as a criminal lawyer, but of course when
Very,
it came to the
very
United
far.
States. Yeah, so it was out of necessity, and I won't go into detail because it's in the book, and but yeah, it was something my mother knew, and she had, as my father also said, he'd always coin various phrases. He was a mastermind of that. But she had that special attention to detail. And so it made things stand out. And it turned out that she was awarded, I think, 28 patents.
Wow.
And was noted as, don't quote me on this, well, certainly, if not but one of the greatest patent holders of her time, female
amazing.
patent holders of her
really
time,
amazing.
if not the.
That's really neat. Now, and correct me because this is over 20 years ago when I was in my, like I was telling you earlier, my
So we were talking about girdles
fashion and girdles, and yeah, my first career was in the fashion industry, and I wanted to. My goal was to work my way up into being a buyer. I wanted to be a buyer, and I wanted to. And if it wasn't a buyer, I wanted to be the textiles person. I wanted to be the person who was picking the colors in the new spring line and all of those things. And that was my, my late teens, early 20s dream. And then I had my son, so everything shifted. But I was trying to remember, was Olga the first one who used boning in the undergarments?
Oh, no. Boning was used, corsets.
Corsets, right.
kept up because there wasn't stretch fabric.
Right.
Woven fabrics. It was really, knitted stretch fabrics came much later, 20th century.
Right.
Maybe the 19th, but I don't even think. So they used boning, and in fact, my grandmother, who made corsets for refined clientele in Krakow, she would use boning, and it was made from whale bone.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we call it stays. They were
slowly coming
made,
back to
and there's still stays, like it's an underwire in a bra or stays in a garment. They're just
To
something
keep
to
it
create
formed
shape
and,
to create form. Yeah, but I don't think too many, except for maybe enticement wear, which is out of my zone of. I always say I don't do enticement.
I'm kind of glad the corset
the red
thing
light
is
district.
passed. I don't think wearing corset sounds very comfortable, but at the time it was
Well,
necessary for that. Now,
there is I think COVID actually, and that's so interesting how, and I'm glad it's changed the way we wear clothes. And I think people are much more into comfort and
Less restriction. Yes.
yeah, structure. Yeah, a little more free form. And people always would say to me, "Now, you design bras," and we did much more than it was actually the Olga company did everything from the first garments were garter belts, and then went to girdles and bras, and then they went sleepwear, day wear, and when I went into the company, we were doing aerobic wear, and but sorry.
That's okay. You had a full line, though, of everything.
products,
Products.
Started with bras, but got into. I remember in the
sleepwear.
book you're talking about sports bras and sportswear and all of that that came about, and so it was a lot more. But the book again, I mean, that's a big piece of it. But the book has
it's not
so
everything. There's
much
so much.
more to it than. Because I want readers, and if they're going to get your book, and we'll give them a way to order the book. But I think there's so much more. It's your growing up. It's your with your sisters, your parents making this life in America. And there's one piece I want to talk about quickly, if we could. And I hope I'm not giving away too much. But I was under the very wrong assumption growing up that none of my mother's friends or my grandmother's friends or contemporaries and had ever had breast cancer because nobody talked about it the way, and you talk about in the book your mother having a double mastectomy. Is that correct? Or
Well, no, she had a single mastectomy, but a couple of times.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And and you talk about how she started working on some fashion designs after that, and how she ended up talking to somebody else who went through it. And what I thought about this, because we're this week that we're filming this podcast, even though this doesn't come out till Friday, this week here in Farmington is one of the big cancer lunch fashion shows. In fact, it's tomorrow here in Farmington to raise money. And it just made me think that back in the day, people were still going through these things. They just didn't talk about them. There wasn't the sort of everybody
Awareness, the outside
and
awareness that we have
raising
now,
money
yeah.
and talking about it, because I think about with your mom going through that, and she probably didn't talk about it.
No, she didn't talk about it, and particularly my parents were very formal, being European, and the only person she spoke to, and I don't even think she spoke about her own situation with my friend's mother who had breast cancer, and we weren't supposed to talk about it.
Yeah.
Image was very important. It was a different time, but yes, she did create garments, but I don't even think that people at the company knew that
really?
she had it. And it was a time where, she would be sick, and then go away, and she'd come back, and she always seemed fresh, and you know, things where there were a lot of kind of secrets in our family, and I talk a lot about that, of secrets, and because of wanting to meld in with the group, and so yeah, I'm so glad that people are able to talk about it now. I mean, you think about it now, like why?
Right. Yeah.
But there was shame.
Well, and my grandmother, my mom's mom, she had a single mastectomy, and I remember going with her to buy her prosthetic bra. That's what we called it. I didn't know what else to call it back then. But
the prosthesis is what you put in.
Right. Yeah. And this was my country club grandmother that I talked to you about earlier. You know, very proper. Had her pearls on and her diamonds, and was mortified that somebody was going to see you know what she went through, and she had to take her shirt off. They had to fit her. They had to find the right size, and so my mom and I were with her, and I was a young teenager when this was happening. So very early 90s, late 80s maybe, and I remember we got in the car and she cried, and I'd never really seen that particular grandmother cry, and she says, "Do not tell your grandfather." And I will not. I will not say a word. I will sit here quietly while you cry a little bit. But it was just,
her husband didn't know?
Yeah, he knew. Well, he knew about the cancer, but she didn't want him to know about the situation, that somebody had to see her and see her with her scar, and then that she shed a few tears out of just being mortified of that whole thing.
You know, actually, and that again is memory. I had two sisters. I lost one, but the one that is I still have. Her memory, she's 4 years older than me, and her memory is that my mother didn't have chemo because my father was concerned of the image of her losing hair, and he didn't want people to know because he was afraid that it might affect the business.
Yeah.
I don't have that memory, but
right.
You know, I'm guessing that probably.
Right. Yeah, my grandmother didn't have chemo either. She opted not to.
Yeah.
Because of the image. Yeah, and she wore her hair super, super short my entire life, her entire life. And so I just didn't understand why she wouldn't do it. But thankfully they got everything that they needed to, so she still lived a much longer life. But I just think how hard to not
like
be able to
going
talk
through it,
about
you're
it, and
alone.
And that's just one, and then again, just one story of your family. And so this book is, again, just so much more than about the undergarments and the fashions. So you're, again, our keynote at our Women's Summit, which is coming up on October 28th, and it is going to be live streamed. So if you don't live here in Farmington, or if you miss the registration deadline, which was, when, Georgette? Friday the 15th. There's a private joke there. We'll tell you the story at the Women's Summit.
That's okay.
We survived.
We survived it. It's fine. But so anyway, the live registration piece is over, but we still have virtual tickets available. So if you are living anywhere in the United States and you want to listen to this whole day of really amazing speakers, starting out with you, Christina, we welcome you to
sign up,
get a virtual ticket. And so where can people get your book? Where can people order it?
Well, if you're coming to the summit, we'll be selling books there. I always like to support our local independent bookstores. I think, Maria's in
Durango.
They carry it, and you can find it on Bookshop. I think it's bookshop.org. Amazon carries it. Any of the fine booksellers will carry it. But,
and do you have a specific website for
I
it? I know
do
we
have a
follow each other on
website.
LinkedIn, but
yeah, it's www.chrysalis, Christina Erteszek, which is hard to.
I know. I always have to check it how I spell it.
That's Christina Erteszek, ERTESZEK.com. And and I want to add something else about talking about that there's a lot of backstory, a lot of different, and we talk about adversity. They encountered so many different kinds of adversities. And then for me, a big adversity, I came to work in the company 1979, and about in the mid-'80s, the company was taken over in a hostile takeover. It was a Michael Milken junk bond deal, and that was very devastating. And so there's a lot of encounters that had to be dealt with and explored. I think of myself as a character within the book, because as a memoirist, I am obviously the narrator, but I think the greatest compliment I get on this book is that it kind of reads like a novel. And but
there's the one scene that I just couldn't stop turning the pages. Is when your mother comes to see you and says, "I have something I need to talk to you about. I have something I need to tell you." And then there's sort of this build up where she wants some tea or something. There's kind of like, what is she going to say? What is it? So it does read like a novel.
Yeah.
And so any plans to write another book?
Actually, I started one, but as soon as this book came out, I've had no time to work on it.
Right.
I recently became a grandmother, and
Oh,
how
I
that
do. I do.
Yeah, so, and my daughter's nearby, so I've got a lot of duties to.
I'm jealous because my grandkids live far away, so I'm jealous of that.
Yeah.
So great. Well, anything to wrap up on the summit, Georgette, as far as how to register? Can they still go through the website to get the virtual ticket?
Yes, so they can still go through the website. It's professionalwomens-summit.com.
Right.
And so there's a big button on the homepage right there, and you can register there. So, and all the information's on there. The schedule for the day, of course, lunch is included.
Right.
We have the morning muffins and water,
evening,
tea,
coffee,
all that,
the
coffee, and then the evening network following with the
Zia Chicks.
Thank you. I'm like, the Zia Chicks.
It's a lot to remember.
So it'll be a great day. So
and the plans for this Women's Summit are to grow this into at least a 2-day, if not a 3-day event, where we incorporate. I know, like we incorporate
with
film, women in
after-hour
film,
stuff,
like expand on that a little bit, and other. So
I'd like
have
to bring
big
in
plans.
even more women authors, because we do have local artists that are also going to be part of the day where they can sell their items and talk about the things that they create, and it's
maybe some artist workshops. I mean, we don't know where this is going to go.
Yeah.
We're just glad to be able to have it this year in person, but we do have plans to
there's
to
so
really
many
grow
options
this.
too for themes and stuff. I was like, brainstorming stuff yesterday. I was going to run past you and stuff, but I keep running into all these things on my social media feeds and LinkedIn and stuff, and just how creative women are right now with just the different tools that are available now, and how they're just making a living at doing whatever it is that they love, or their their social media page, or they're selling some sort of course or whatever. It's really inspiring.
Copywriting. I'm noticing that's a big one.
It's a huge one. So I think there's so much opportunity to continue to expand this, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Christina. This was we've
you.
been really looking forward to this, and I know I reached out to you when I first saw that your book had been published, and was hoping that you'd be able to be a part of the Women's Summit. So we're really excited to have you speak about the book, talk about it, and I encourage everybody to get it and read it. and find all the bits that it's, like I said, a lot more than just the bras and girdles and things like that. So a lot more to
all
it.
the stitchery that
All the
goes,
stitchery, yeah. But yeah, you make that a piece of it as well. You talk about the stitchery and how important it was. And so it's just woven in to all the story. And I think your father would be very proud. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Over a Cup of Coffee. And again, the book for our listening audience is The First Lady of Underfashions by Christina Erteszek. And to find out more information about the Women's Summit, you can visit the Chamber website at gofarmington.com or the Women's Summit website, which is www.professionalwomens-summit.com. So thanks. We'll see you next time.